afraid. That's why you can't leave. It's okay, Truman. I understand.
Hi folks, so a very important scene in the movie, in the Truman Show. I mean, the whole movie is actually very important and very significant and very profound, but the scene that I wanted to sort of touch on at the moment was when Truman faces his fears of getting into the boat, right, and sailing, leaving the shore and sailing into the ocean. Now Truman was conditioned and programmed and traumatized by water, to be afraid of water, because when he was just a boy out sailing with his father, and his father requested for him to go back to the shore, that it looked like a storm was hitting, and Truman said, no, just a little bit longer.
I don't like the look of that weather, son. I think we should head back.
Oh, no, Dad. Yes.
No, come on, we should go back. Son, listen. Okay.
And that storm resulted in Truman's father dying, okay? Drowning, basically. Obviously it didn't really happen, but according to Truman it did, alright? So Truman was programmed to not go into the water, to almost be petrified of sort of any deep water whatsoever. And we see that Truman is desperate to escape, desperate for truth, desperate for his freedom, right?
You're talking like a teenager.
Maybe I feel like a teenager.
We have mortgage payments, Truman. We have car payments, but we're just going to walk away from our financial obligations. I thought we were going to try for a baby.
He knows somehow that he lives in a false world. He knows that, I don't know how, I mean, he just figures it out. You know, he can't understand how and why, but he knows that something's not right. He knows that the people are not genuine. He knows that his life has almost been scripted, and everybody else that's in his life has a script that they're reading from. He doesn't know to that degree, but he just knows that they're being untrue, and they're not being real, okay? And so he wants freedom, and he also wants love, because a long time ago he fell in love with a woman, I can't remember her name, and she disappears off the scene, right? And he wants to pursue her as well, and so he's motivated for freedom, for truth, and for love, okay? And so he has to go and face his darkest of fears, right? He has to go to the place that he least wants to visit, right? In a way, which is the water, which is the trauma, all right, which is holding him in bondage, you know. Truman, I like the saying "born into bondage." I think that's a great little saying there. And so he wants to free himself from the bondage, so he's motivated by freedom, he's motivated by truth, and he's motivated by love. And so he takes the risk, okay? And that's what's required, okay, for him to find freedom, if you will. He doesn't know that, but ultimately that's what he's driven by. He's driven by a sensation, he's driven by an intuition, he's driven by a feeling, if you will. That freedom lies beyond the shores, beyond the ocean, if you will, on the other side of the ocean, in the unknown. Okay, Truman has never left his hometown. I forgot what the town is called. I can't remember what it's called, but he's never left the town. You know, he's never left home. He's never left the palace, like the Buddha, you know, who's born into the palace. He's never left it, so he doesn't know anything else. All right, and so there's the mystery, and he's willing to go into the mystery. Okay, not easily, but I mean, he's desperate enough, and he realizes that he cannot stay in the palace anymore. That the Garden of Eden now has become a prison for him. It's become he's a slave. It's untrue. It's all the beauty of it, in a way, has faded away, and now it's become monsters. And I remember in the scene of the movie when all the crew members, or the actors in the Truman Show, in the actual movie, when they're looking for him, they all are walking together, and they're all desperately wanting to find him. And the dogs, the so-called friendly dogs now, are like, you can see they're vicious, and they, there's saliva coming out of their mouth, and they, and everybody's looking for Truman, right? Because they all have a heavy investment in him, right? But not from a loving point of view. They wish to keep him enslaved, all right? Because they themselves are slaves, actually, but they don't realize it. But with him freeing himself and becoming sovereign and becoming, that they lose, and the game is over for everybody else. The lie, the drama, the play doesn't exist anymore. It becomes the Maya, it becomes the illusion, and it's a checkmate for everybody else who was playing in the Truman Show, except for Truman, right? And also for Christof. Christof is the inventor of the Truman Show. I think it's Ed Harris. Ed Harris, who designed the Truman Show, who designed the cinema, who designed the stage. Christof has got a great investment in Truman, right? I mean, this has been going on for I don't know how many years, for I think maybe 30 or something like that. Christof, his whole life, I mean, most of his life has probably become about the Truman Show, right? He lives, he breathes, he eats, he sleeps Truman, basically, right? He sees Truman as his son. I mean, he literally adopted Truman in the first place, okay? And so he's got a heavy investment in this game being played out. And Christof would almost say that he loves Truman, that he's been a father to Truman, that he's been a god to Truman, that he's kept Truman in the Garden of Eden in a way, okay? Because all his needs have been met, and he lives in Sea Haven. That's the town. That's what it's called. And everybody in Sea Haven, everybody's healthy and everybody's well, and the sun is always shining, basically, in a way. And everybody's upbeat and in good moods and is healthy and very organized and very structured. Okay, everybody, and whatever it is, and I mean, yes, whatever. And so Christof feels that he's given him this Garden of Eden, and now Truman wants to take a bite from the apple, right? The forbidden fruit, in a way. Well, that's what, it's interesting there, folks. It's like what the role of the snake played in the Garden of Eden was to tempt the woman, to tempt Eve to eat from the tree of good and evil, to know that you will know good and evil, the good or bad, in a way. And it's like before you never knew that. And when I look in the world today, how many people do not know the difference between good and bad, in a way? We don't necessarily know. Alright? We don't really have morals or ethics or something. We don't know what's right and we don't know what's wrong. Right? We don't know that. Watch television. Watch a few movies, big blockbuster movies. Watch a few adverts. Just see how consumerism or capitalism works. See how politics works. Okay, see how we're treating the planet, whatever it is. We don't know what we are doing because we don't know what we're doing is wrong. We don't even know what we're doing often to ourselves is unhealthy, right? Until we eat from the fruit, and then we know the difference between good and evil, and then we are able to decide. So it's interesting that how the snake in the story of Adam and Eve is almost seen as a very dangerous and evil almost perpetrator or player in the game. Alright, it's interesting that. It really is. Anyway, so coming back. So Truman faces his fears. He gets, he leaves the shore of the known and he goes into the unknown. And the storm rages, Christof designs a storm when they find Truman eventually sailing away, and Truman being the hero. Then Christof decides, let's create a storm.
Give me some lightning. Again. Hit him again.
Alright. Let's knock him out, basically. Let's convince him to turn back. Because, we need him. We need him, and we don't want him to be free, in a sense. Okay? And Christof, in a way, thinks that this is what's best for Truman. To a certain degree, he really thinks this is what Truman really needs. And so he creates this storm. Alright? And the storm is unforgiving. It's brutal. I mean, Christof doesn't stop at a small little drizzle or something like that. He creates, wind and lightning and the waves of the ocean to become restless, and basically he capsizes Truman's boat. And even one of the crew members who's manifesting the storm through the technology, one of the crew members says, we're going to kill him, basically. And so Christof's reply was, well, he was born on TV, he can die on TV, what's the difference? Right? And it's interesting because Christof now is contradicting himself, because in a way, in an interview earlier on in the movie, they ask him and they say, don't you think it's unfair? And he says, no, not necessarily. If Truman wanted to leave, if his desires were strong enough, he would be able to leave, and there's nothing we could do to stop him. But now Christof is trying everything in his power to stop Truman, to the degree of which he's almost prepared to kill Truman and drown him, basically, on national TV. I mean, how would that look to now the audience, knowing that Christof is in charge of the weather, and that Christof, designed a storm strong enough to capsize Truman and to sink his boat to the bottom of the make-believe ocean, right? Imagine that. But Christof doesn't care. He's probably his ego and his ego and an investment in Truman is so large that he just does not want Truman to leave. But again, Truman feels that he might as well die. He shouts. He says, "Is that all you got? Is that all you got?" Truman feels he can. Why? I might as well die, because if I go back to the shore, I'm living a lie. So I might as well be dead, right? Because I've outgrown where I've come from. It no longer serves me, right? It's smothering me. It's suffocating me, all right? And it's unhealthy, and it's a lie. And so if I was still there, I might be dead because it's unreal. For Truman, the truth becomes a necessity. The truth becomes like air, realness, reality becomes, you cannot live without it. All right, so he's willing to even die for the truth, right, and die for love. He will not be held back. And so this is a very, very important scene, and it speaks to many of us in our own lives, right? It speaks to many of us in our own lives in a big way, obviously, because it requests of us that we go into the mystery, into the unknown, into the uncharted waters, into the road less traveled, if you will, okay, to go against our comforts, to go against our beliefs, to go against the good word of the religious folk and our authoritative folk and whatever it is, to venture out into that which is the taboo, whatever. That's what's requested, to turn your back on it all and to venture out. And so this is we could take this talk in many different directions, right? We really could. But the direction that I'd like to take it in a way is to see that this is a very hard point for me to come to terms with. To see that our own Truman show that we've been presented with in our own lives, being born into the Matrix or Plato's cave, right, is a gift. Right? Is a gift. That's where I'd like to, I've been thinking of, I cannot really live by this, especially all the time. Today especially, I don't feel that it's a gift. Right? I'm having one of those off days, if you will. Those imbalanced or misplaced days, in a sense. Where I suppose also what's going on is for myself a lot of processing of difficulties, of challenges, of hard times, right, currently and in the past. A lot of processing, a lot of letting go, a lot of shedding, a lot of purging, if you will. And so when, for myself, I'm in the sort of experience or this place, I cannot see that it's all for a gift. I cannot see that it has been a gift, if you will. I suppose sometimes the way I see it, it's almost like I've been a prisoner, and the prison guard brings me some sloppy oats, food to eat because I haven't eaten in days, and it's like I'm asked or requested to give thanks and gratitude and appreciation for these sloppy cold oats. I get one meal every few days. It's not even a meal. It's put into a tin, like you see in these prison movies. It's hectic, folks. And it's these little tins, and they put the slop in the tin, and then they throw it under the door. If the guy's in solitary confinement, they just, you hear the scraping of the tin bowl on the floor, and you look at this goop, whatever it is, and so for myself, it's like, and today in particular, it's like, so I must be appreciative of this. How can I be when I'm in the prison cell, when I'm in this confinement, when I'm limited, when I'm having to put up with whatever I'm putting up with and what I've been through, I don't know if that makes sense. Today I feel that way, and I'll process it, and tomorrow or the next day, or whenever the day comes, and I'll wake up and I'll feel a bit lighter on my feet, and I'd feel a lot more appreciative and a lot more positive and upbeat, and I can see for the time being that all was for good. Or was it for good? And I can only say that in my own personal life. I can only speak for myself in that way. I can't say I can try, but maybe that's secondary, to try and say that it's all been for good, that the whole of history, that the whole story of humankind has been for good, and even where we are at now is for good, or for something greater and more profound, or something, or with reason. Let's not say maybe give it a good or bad, but it's all has purpose. Like if you look at nature, you can say it seems that nature doesn't have much of a purpose, the way that everything eats off everything else to survive, right? You might say it doesn't have a purpose, but if you look from the higher perspective, that why everything eats with everything else, right, is because it keeps things in balance, right? It keeps things in order. So there's a little bit of chaos, or it's 50-50, not maybe a little bit of chaos, but there's chaos and there's order. So that's if you want to look into nature. So on the one hand, sometimes, so I can't understand in other people's lives why certain tragedies and certain things happen, and people that I know in my life that are born with a child who's got some kind of very rare disease, and the child at 3 months old is in continuous pain. I mean, for crying out loud, or even for a 5-year-old child who's suffering from something or other, some kind of immune deficiency malfunction that, I don't know, doesn't produce enough of something or other, and the child's in constant pain and agony, or the child is, lies in bed the whole day, is bedridden, cannot get up, something like that. I cannot understand it for other people. Okay, and I cannot understand it in the world, like why there is so much suffering, why there is so much of an imbalance in the world, why there just seems like that empire, as Neil Kramer would say, has taken such a strong force over, the world in a way. Why it is this way? Why has there been so many wars? Right? Why is there such a thing as Black Friday? If you want to, break it down into the, the detail. Like why? What's become of us? Why are we so willing to be, be okay with our bondage? Why? So, and then I can argue sometimes, well, again, the higher purpose might be that we all come here for different reasons, or we come here for many lifetimes, and it needs to be harsh. Our existence needs to be difficult. It needs to be challenging. We need to have that contrast so that we are able to find who we are through it all. Again, if there was no Truman Show, okay, so coming back to this, okay, so yeah, okay, you see what I'm saying on the one hand. Before I move on, about in my own life, I can find it redeemable what I've been through, okay, on certain days, all right, when I'm feeling stronger and I'm feeling more collected and I'm feeling more calm. Those are the days that I can say, yes, I can see it in my own life, but I can't see it on a global level sometimes, or barely ever, or I can guess, I can try and imagine why it is, you know, but I can't. And for other people, I can't understand as well why there is suffering and pain and how brutal and harsh life can be, and how brutal and harsh, and how the world can, you know, break your heart in such an unfair manner, right? So that's the one hand. But on the other hand, what I'm saying is, if there was no Truman Show, if there was no Truman, if Christof didn't design the Truman Show for Truman, he would be born free to a certain degree, wouldn't he? He would be born in, let's put it this way, he would be born in a true world, right? Christof's importance is that Christof he's a designer of the false. You see, Christof designs the false reality. Without the false reality, you might not know what the true reality is. Okay? You wouldn't necessarily know. So Christof is a very, very important figure. Christof is giving Truman the opportunity to learn about his own strengths, his own abilities, to learn, to grow, right? To develop, to find strength, to find meaning in himself, right? To see how he can, what kind of courage he has, to learn courage, to learn bravery. Christof gives him the fears that he needs to overcome. But if he didn't have the fears, then how would he overcome them? What obstacle lies in his way? What mountain would he have to climb, you know, in order to see it from a higher view and perspective, and grow the muscle that comes with, you know, climbing a mountain? You see, so Christof is in this situation, only in this situation, is a necessary evil to a certain degree. Isn't that so? Is that not right to say that Christof is an important figure, and that's why Christof is ultimately allowed to do what he's allowed to do, because I'm saying in such a, you know, in God's, in let's say the cosmos or the logos, that Christof is allowed to do such a thing, you know, because a lot of people say, well, why does God allow evil to exist, right? What's the purpose of evil? Okay, so Christof, in a sense, in the real world, is allowed to do this. No one's stopping Christof, because Christof has assigned himself to be, you know, to play the dark figure in a way, if you will. I mean, that's what some people view Christof as in the Truman Show. The woman that Christof falls in love with, I can't remember her name again, right? But she says that he's a prisoner, and you are the prison guard, or what do you call it? The person who heads up the prison, oh man, there's a word for it, obviously, it slips my mind. The head of the prison, I can't remember that. I can't remember the title of that. I'm sure you folks are thinking of the word right now. Anyways, so it's hard to come to terms with, folks. I mean, it's hectic, you know. So we're talking about duality here, and the necessity for duality on a real level, the necessity of duality. And so if we can understand that Christof is necessary, then Truman, when leaving the Truman Show, and so this is another thing Christof says to Truman. He says to him, I couldn't make it easy for you, Truman. That is a very, very powerful statement by Christof, to say, I couldn't make it easy for you. And why couldn't Christof make it easy for him? Because there's an understanding that the sweeter the tougher the battle, the sweeter the victory. That's again the duality of things. So that's what I think Christof is saying. The tougher the challenge, right, the sweeter the victory. As we know, if you go to gym and you're lifting a weight that is not giving you any sort of resistance, and it's lifting, you're not going to grow any muscle. Okay, you're not going to grow any muscle. Without the pain, almost, I can't stand this saying, there is no gain. There's very little gain. Right? I wanted to do another talk on why it is, why it's pain that actually wakes us up. But so many people are in pain. Why don't they wake up? Well, again, because they're desensitized from the pain. They don't want to feel the pain. Right? That's what consumerism is. That's what addiction is a lot of the time. Okay? That's what television is. That's what politics is. You know? That's what the world we live in is, to distract you from your pain. So you don't feel your pain. You don't feel much at all, like I spoke about before. Your emotions, you detach from your emotions. You're allowed to feel fear, because fear keeps you in your place. Right? So fear, you're allowed to be in touch with. Well, not really in touch with. You're in fear, but you see, you're having emotions, but you're disconnected from them. A lot of the time, that's what antidepressants do. I know when I started, and this is only from my own personal experience, when I started taking antidepressants, that, let me just save this here, folks. When I started taking antidepressants, that they helped me, and they were probably necessary where I was holding in my life. I mean, maybe, I don't know. But one of the things was that it made me not feel very much at all. So I thought I was well. You see, what was troubling me before, one of the things that was troubling me before was my emotions, was pain, was suffering, was anxiety, right? These were the things that were paining me. Why? Because my life wasn't in alignment, and I wasn't being true to myself. Okay, I was overweight, I was an alcoholic, I was a heavy smoker, okay, I was clubbing all the time, I was being very irresponsible, my health was atrocious, there was no such thing for myself as health. I was constantly making a fool out of myself. I remember when I used to get drunk, I used to make a big fool of myself, I used to embarrass myself. And I used to not like myself more. But what the antidepressants I felt did for me was that it made me not give a darn. It just made me feel like it took the edge off, so it made me not feel like I needed to care for anything, or that there was anything wrong. But there was things that were very, very wrong, completely wrong. But I had no idea. I've seen this with a friend of mine that back in the day when he went on to the antidepressants, and how heartless he became, and how insensitive he became. Really, and he had no idea what he was doing. And I'm not saying that's the only thing that antidepressants do, but for myself, that's how it affected me. Okay? And what happened when I got off the antidepressants, I was highly, highly emotional. You know, a whole lot of these emotions started coming back. You know, so I was removed from my feelings, and I was removed. You know, Terence McKenna says if we could feel what we were doing to the planet, we would stop immediately. We really would. If we could get in touch with our feelings and what we're doing to one another and what we're doing to planet Earth, if we could get in touch with that, right, we would stop immediately. We would absolutely change around. We really would. Because our emotions would prevent us. They would be too painful. It would be too painful for us to continue what we're doing. Not only to each other, but to ourselves. To ourselves and to our children and to our grandchildren and to, we would see straight away. We would see how insensitive we were being. We would see how bullyish we were being, how nihilistic we were, how grandiose we were, how selfish we would be. You know, somebody who's got 1,000 selfies on Instagram and on Facebook or something like that, some woman is dolled up in every picture, It's a mother maybe. I think I might have done a talk on this before, I'm not sure if I even uploaded it. But a mother, who's got whatever it is, and she doesn't realize that her children are taking note of what she's doing. Let's just say this is a minor example, and also how she's so how vain, how in love she is with her own physical features, which inevitably are going to change, which are inevitably going to fade away, right? I mean, that fears me. It scares me how the youth in the early 20s and 30s and early 40s to a degree are so obsessed with their looks, not knowing that their looks are going to fade away. And then what are you going to have left? What are you going to do? You've put so much time and effort and energy and money into your looks. You've identified yourself with your looks. You've taken over 1,000 Instagram photos, selfies, or whatever it is. You've got so many likes. People only know you by your features. For many people, they only know you by this image. And when that image goes, what are you going to do? It's that idea of Vanilla Sky with David Ames, very important movie, with Tom Cruise. What happens? He's a good-looking man. And Julie Gianni, I think her name is, drives him off a cliff in her car, because he messes her around, and she drives him off not a cliff, off the bridge, and his face gets disfigured, and he can't operate anymore. He loses everything that he was about, in a way, right? And he has to wear a mask. Isn't that funny? The only solution, they can't fix his face. The only thing they can give him is a mask to wear, for those of you who have seen the movie, right? I remember the scene when they give him the mask, all these top doctors, and they say, it's a prosthetic mask or something. He says, I see that. He says, it takes care of Halloween, but what about the other 364 days of the year? He says, it's a mask, people. You want me to wear a mask? Essentially, he was wearing a mask the whole time. You see? And so that's the thing, and I see how we are so obsessed with the surface of things, and the surface of things inevitably fade away. They fall apart, they break down, they become old very quickly, whether it's a new cell phone, whether it's a new car, whether it's a new pair of trousers, whether it's a new hairstyle, whether it's new nail polish, whether it's new sunglasses, whether it's a new TV. It gets old quickly, folks. It gets old very quickly. And so where we invested is what's inevitably going to make us bankrupt, in a way. I'm not saying financially. Yes, obviously financially as well, but spiritually and psychologically. There'll come a time, and probably there now, where we don't really have identities, right? We don't really have identities. I'm saying identities in who we actually are. We're all just the same. We're all just these grey blobs, if you will, all just grey sort of statues in a way that can't move, that are frozen, that are marble or something or other, right? And fades away. Anyway, so how do I get onto that? I'm not sure. But with saying that, I suppose, is that's what we met with. That's the Truman Show world that's been designed for us. That's the distraction. That's the Maya. That's the illusion. Okay? These are the gods of our times. It's the musicians, it's the actors, it's the billionaires, it's the sports people. Okay, it's the politicians and whatever it is. A lot of the time the church is the government. We're very religious. We're very religious. We're very devoted to capitalism, consumerism, right? And many other things. Anyway, so I'm not sure how I got into that tangent, but that's the setup. I mean, here's a guy who drives in this road, and he's with this loud exhaust pipe, right, that makes such a blaring loud noise. And I'm thinking to myself, man, why do you do this? I was talking about emotions now, remember. Why do you do this? Can you not know the disturbance that you're causing, creating to other people? Like, what is your intention with your loud exhaust pipe? right? And why is it that you've got to speed down a road where children sometimes play? Or barely play, because children are inside watching TV and playing PlayStation or whatever it is. But why? Why? Where are your emotions? Can't you feel what you are doing? Anyway, so coming back was about feeling. I remember now, it was about feeling. And so we feel the lie, alright? We feel the untrue, if you will. And that's what motivates us to find truth, if you will. We feel the discomfort, right? It's funny because I say we've got to leave our comfort zones. But our comfort zones are actually very discomforting. They're very discomforting. I wanted to do a talk in regards to holding on to our discomforts for comfort, in a way, which is a very strange idea, but it's really true. It's like so many of us are holding on to, let's say, a negative self-image about ourselves that we don't want to let go of because we don't know who we would be without it. Many of us are so scared of our light than we are of our darkness, that we'd rather sit with the darkness in the light. I'm saying I know people that are in very unhealthy relationships, in very unhealthy workplaces, right? Whatever it is. Very unhealthy negative talk, very unhealthy addictions, very codependent relationships. And yet people will not change those things because they don't feel that they have the confidence or the strength or the ability to get better, to improve, to change, right? They are comfortable in their discomfort. And so they don't believe in themselves enough to be able to break out, to change. They don't know. They're scared of the unknown. They're scared of what they're also capable of in a positive way. People are rather easily given to their addictions, into their overeating, into their codependencies, into their negative self-image, right? Into setting themselves out every single day, than rather actually believing in themselves and empowering themselves. We'd rather disempower ourselves continuously every day because we don't believe that we have the power, right? That's too hard to reach to. It's also hard to reach into because nobody else is doing it. Very, very few people. You hear about people, everybody hears about people every now and again, you know, of people that have sort of, you know, found their power, found their independence, found their strength, found their light, and manifested it, you know, and radiated it into being. But for most of us, most people aren't doing it. Most people are resonating with the darkness of themselves, the laziness, the greed, the corruption, the envy, the lust, the jealousy, the laziness, I say laziness, you know, the despair, the hopelessness, the weakness, their weaknesses and whatever it is, their patheticness, like, you know, the Homer Simpson kind of character, you know, the Homer Simpson kind of character. It's like, I'm stupid and I love it, you know. And so that's it. That's what coming back to Truman and ending off here, folks. That's what is so epic about the movie and the story of Truman Burbank, you know. That's what was so important, is that Truman was facing his fears and he found the strength, and he had he became, you know, have zero tolerance for the lie. And I think also in essence he believed that if he committed himself and he faced his fears and he did what he had to do, that he would come through on the other side, that there was something that would, you know, that was awaiting for him with loving arms, right? There was freedom. There was a light at the end of the tunnel. This is what Truman indefinitely believed in or felt. Otherwise, why would he risk? You know, that's what Terence McKenna says. He says it's like, you know, going into the unknown. It's like, what does he say? Jumping into the void or the abyss and realizing it's landing on a bed of feathers or bed of roses or something like that. You know, petals or something. You know, it's a soft landing, but it looks, you know, it looks like there is no soft landing. There is nowhere to land, right? There is nothing to catch you when you leap. You know, There's nothing to catch you when you leap. And that was interesting at the end of the movie of Vanilla Sky, where he has to jump off the building in order to realize that he will wake up. If he jumps off, that something will catch him when he falls. You know? That he will be alright. I think in every hero story, you will hear about somebody taking a leap. Not just because their current situation has turned so odious and sour and is expelling them almost like Neo in the Matrix, but almost that there's a faith that there will be, that something will catch them when they jump. Isn't that amazing how children are so willing to play that game where they're standing on a table which they shouldn't be standing on, or they're standing on a step and they want to jump, or they're standing on the side of the pool. Obviously some of them are scared, but they just want you to catch them. They want to jump, they want to risk, and they want you to catch them, and they'll trust you that you'll catch them, and they'll do it over and over and over again. They love it when you throw a child up in the air and you catch them, right? It's just that comfort and that knowing and something or other. And so that's what that's what is also going on here, folks. It's not just about finding our own light, let's say, if we, to summarize, but it's also to know that there is something that we return to, that is love, right? That there is love. And so this is difficult. No matter how dark the hour, this is the challenge. No matter how dark the hour, that there's light at the end of the tunnel. No matter how dark the night, that the dawn is nearby. This is very hard. The world we live in, the contradiction is very hard. It can almost sometimes churn your stomach. When you're going through these moments in your life, really, and you're at your end of your rope, and it's like, this is it. I can't take no more. I cannot see an out. I cannot see anything positive from this. I cannot manage this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm defeated. Right? And you're defeated, and then you say, I have strength for this. I'm stronger than I know. And my light can shine away through this darkness. It's heavy, folks. It's heavy. It's heavy. And so you can see that evil is permitted, if you want to call it evil, right? And so that's hard. It's hard. It's like, again, coming to see that it's all a gift at the end of the day. I can't say I'm there yet, folks. I can't. I mean, it's, and you know what? To be realistic and to be fair, is that there's no end point here. It's not like at the end of the Truman Show or the end of Vanilla Sky, the movie. But let's just say the Truman Show. It's not like at literally, I don't know, tomorrow you arrive at the exit door of the Truman Show in a way, and you find your salvation, and then the story's over, and that's it. That kind of the promise of enlightenment or something like that, where, I don't know, everything is going to make sense all the time, and you're just going to be in absolute bliss, in absolute iriness, as the Rastafarians would say. That everything will make sense to you all the time, that you will be you've overcome your ego, you've overcome the challenges, and just every day is just so blissful and so, I don't know, that, I don't know, maybe for some, I'm yet to meet people like as such, maybe for some, but that's it. It's an ongoing story, folks. It's ongoing, but that doesn't mean that strength isn't derived and light isn't shone, and manifested or radiated, right? And not for just for oneself, but for others as well. Doesn't mean that there hasn't been growth achieved. It's growth being achieved all the time, and that's what's beautiful, and there's still so much work to be done, right? So it's not, again, desperately pushing for this arrival point. You know, that's very much a Western point of view. Pushing, you know, you're going to get your grades, you're going to get your license for your car, you're going to get into university, you're going to get, you know, you're going to get there, you're almost there. See, we can't live by that notion. We don't know what destiny we are on. We don't know what's in store for us here. We do not know. We don't know what we are a part of, folks. We do not know. We don't know how long it is we have to go. Yes, you know, your time could end tomorrow. Does that mean that you've fulfilled everything that you've needed to fulfill, that you've understood it all, that you perfected it all, that you've radiated all the light? No, we don't know, folks. We're in a mystery. So my point being here is that we don't necessarily look for an endpoint or a place of arrival, right? As a means of sort of where we can sort of catch our breath, or just, you know, give a sigh of relief and, oh, we finally made it, you know, to the promised land, and we're here for good, you know, and all that's said and done, and here we are. I don't think it's like that, folks. I mean, maybe for some, but I think it's not wise to imagine this sort of place, because all you're doing is using a rational, you know, maybe even fearful mind about it. You know, maybe, I don't know, maybe not. Again, who's to say? But that's the idea, is to let it unfold and let it take you where you need to be going, and where it needs to be taking you. You're in a relationship with something, right? You're going to go places where you never thought you were meant to go, you know. Look at where you are today, folks. Look at your life today. You could have never imagined where you are today 10 years ago. Psychologically, spiritually, you know, physically. You could have never imagined who you are today. You couldn't have. So you can't imagine who you're going to be in 10 years' time, in a sense. The potentials are endless, and the pitfalls as well. You know, the potholes are there, you know, so you don't know. So we've got to embrace our becoming, you know, we've got to embrace the potential of getting higher, of getting closer to home, if you will. Yeah, folks, so that's kind of the idea. But I also say that, I must say that, in ending off on that, is because you're not going to have good days. Some days you're just not going to have good days. You know, like that song, my mama always said that there'll be days like these, like this, I think. My mama always said there'll be days like these. And it's true, you know. And so be easy with yourself, be kind and gentle on yourself on days where it's like hard, and it's days where you feel disconnected, where you feel a bit lost, when you're feeling like you're the biggest idiot, right? That you got nothing to offer anybody, or anybody, you know, that your life is a mistake, and you know, you're a good for nothing. You're gonna have days. I have days like that, and so we just got to be present with them. We've got to be okay with it, you know. We've got to allow it to be. I mean, be patient and healing and kind to oneself on the harder days. You know, when times are tough, when the world is looking dark, I'm saying not just your world, but when, like for myself, it's a Black Friday and I'm stuck in my house in modernity, in the city, and I can't even leave my house because everywhere is just traffic, and I feel the pollution of the cars and the energy of the place, you know, suffocating me in a way, and I feel so claustrophobic, and I feel, how is this divine? How is this for the greater good? How is this for my growth? How is this for my development? How is this for my strengthening? How is this an opportunity to radiate my light? And so sometimes it's when I'm in that emotional state or then mind state, and you know, I just got to be cool with myself and not give myself a hard time and saying, well, Aaron, can't you see that it's all for the greater good? Can't you see that it's part and parcel of this journey of life? Can't you see that it's duality? Can't you? No, sometimes I just need to, I don't know, just be kind to myself. You know, just take it a bit slower. Just, you know, when the mind starts chattering and comes up and says, well, you're going to be stuck in this situation and things aren't getting any better in your life, or in regards to people or finances or something like that, and your boss is my boss is becoming more of an arsehole, and you know, my girlfriend's becoming more of a drunk, let's just say, you know. And it's just looking so pear-shaped. It's looking so unfavorable, so unsavory. Right? That you don't come there in that time and say, well, you know, I mean, you can, but like, maybe it's just time to, you know, just breathe and just be present. And just know that tomorrow will be another day, you know, and things are changing, and this is the waves. They come and they go, you know. These are the energies. They come and they visit, you know, they come and they go. They visit, they stay a while, and they go. Right? But it's not to be detached from them again. It's not just to be the observer in a well, that's something else, but I think you can understand what I'm saying. To be in the dance of life, you know, is a big thing. Yeah, folks. Also like to chat about maybe another time where we may be headed. What might be being asked for us in this time of history on a very in a very exclusive way. I'd like to do a talk on that, because I think this idea of the hero's journey, you know, like the Truman Show and Truman, has been since probably the beginning of time. Right? This has been the narrative. But I'd almost imagine that the narrative is changing now. The theme is changing of this world that we're now moving into, or this dimension that we might be moving into, or whatever might be going on. That it's the end of of the hero's journey, right? I'm saying of the narrative, of the story, of the screenplay, of the, you know, of the opportunity. For now on planet Earth, right? It's the end of it, and now it's changing. There's no question about it. The theme is changing, folks. And so maybe in the near future I'd like to do a talk on that as well, and get into the possibilities and what's being asked for us on that front. Alright, folks, if you've made it this far, I highly, highly appreciate it. I hope there's something in this for you. And I'm wishing you well, all the best, and we'll chat soon. Much love.